Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1991 film Hudson Hawk. Now, Hudson Hawk, to me personally, is a underrated gem. I know some people might think I'm crazy for saying that, but I stand by it. Because I've always enjoyed this film ever since I saw it on TV when I was a kid. And it's a movie that, for me personally, is unquestionably unique and incredibly entertaining to watch. It's flawed. Not all of the jokes land. The consistency of quality when it comes to the script is questionable, but it's still a really unique and one of a kind experience. And I think it's misunderstood. I think it was mismarketed when it came out in 1991. They marketed it heavily as an action movie, and it's not an action film. And I think it was way ahead of its time when it comes to the blending of multiple genres, when it comes to the kooky, quirky nature of it, when it comes to mixing comedy and action and fantasy and surreal moments. You see a lot of comedies now in the past few years that are similar to Hudson Hawk, that have gotten praise, that have considerable fan bases. So Hudson Hawk to me was ambitious, it was ahead of its time. It didn't always work, but when it did, it was special. And it was way more special than people gave it credit for. The film is directed by Michael Lehmann, who directed Heathers and would go on to direct Airheads after Hudson Hawk and a few other films. And critics at the time really criticized him heavily. They went after him, and I don't get it. I don't think Michael Lehmann did a bad job at all. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I thought Michael Lehmann did a really great job directing Hudson Hawk. It's a film that's very high concept. It's a hard sell. It's a hard film to make and to do right. And I feel when it comes to the visuals, when it comes to the direction, I think he nailed it. It's a film that's very kooky. It's very zany. It's very off the wall. It's very cartoonish and comic book. And it's very high energy. And I felt that Lehmann just effectively captured everything that he needed to when it comes to the energy of the film, when it comes to the tone of the movie. A much less talented director would have taken this material and done a genuinely bad job with it. And I think people are really overlooking how well Lehmann handled this material and how difficult it was too to handle this kind of film and to really deal with all these different elements and put together a film that is as visually cohesive as it is. When it comes to the comedy, the kooky, goofy, silly, cartoonish comedy in the film, Lehmann really did work well within that area. The comedy is funny, at least when there are gags that are clever, when there are lines that are witty. He definitely does inject that extra bit of wit in there with his direction to really make the gags pop. When it comes to the action, when it is there, it's thrilling. It's exciting to watch. Like the whole sequence on the freeway when Hudson Hawk is on the gurney. That's a really exciting, fun action sequence. It's a great chase scene. If you even want to call it that. Maybe it's not necessarily a chase scene, but it's a really good sequence. It's a lot of fun. And it's an adrenaline rush. And there's other sequences like the heist scenes and other bits of action that are just equally as well shot and well done. And when it comes to like the few moments where it's trying to be a little bit romantic, it also is very sweet and and works in that area as well. And when it comes to the moments of spectacle, when it comes to the big grand moments like showcasing the gold machine, or the scene in the climax where Hudson Hawk is using the flying machine to escape from the castle, or just the whole castle sequence when Hudson Hawk and Tommy Five Tone are like shooting these projectile bombs. He just really got it. And I felt that it was a impressive job, well done in multiple aspects and multiple ways, because of just how really difficult of a film this was to get a grasp on. And that's not even counting the fact that he had to work with Bruce Willis, who was coming up with ideas on the set constantly, and he wanted them incorporated into the movie. So he had to work with that and be spontaneous, and he just does not get enough credit overall for the job that he did with Hudson Hawk. The screenplay by Stephen E. D'Souza, Daniel Waters, based on a story by Bruce Willis and Robert Kraft. It's inconsistent. It has some moments where it really shines, but then it has some genuine lowlights. It's a screenplay that ultimately is what prevents this film from being great. I think this film is still quite good for what it is, despite its flaws, but the script is ultimately what stands out the most for me when it comes to the film's misgivings, or the aspects of it that just don't really pan out. And that is mainly due to the fact that this is a concept and an idea that was just a idea that Bruce Willis and a friend of his had, and they didn't really have a clear idea of what the film was going to be. It's just something that they wanted to do. And that passion is there when it comes to the script and when it comes to the overall film. But in a lot of ways, when you have something like that where it's just an inkling of a concept and it starts off that way, well, it's very difficult to come up with a cohesive product in the end. It's very difficult to come up with a screenplay that's consistent in terms of its overall quality. And so that's why it's so scattershot when it comes to its ideas, when it comes to the effectiveness of certain gags or certain moments, because it started off as a scattershot, scatterbrained idea. And then you have Bruce Willis coming up with ideas last minute on the set, and the writers having to incorporate that. So it just leads to a lot of moments in this film where the script is just, I would say it's not bad. It's just one of those scripts where things aren't always on the same level. And it's too bad, because the idea is really fun. I've always liked this idea of a cat burglar who gets out of prison and he's a fish out of water because he's been in prison for decades, so he has no idea what's popular, what's going on. The whole world is alien to him. I think that honestly should have been fleshed out more when it comes to gags. Like, he had a really fun bit where Hudson's asking what a Nintendo is. I think they really could have wrote more gags based around that. But it's a really fun idea, and I like the zany nature of it. I like that it's like a Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon come to life. I like that it's just crazy and zany and inventive and really creative. It's a very courageous film in a lot of ways because of just how out there it is. You've got Hudson Hawk and his friend Tommy Five Tone, and they're singing songs while they're doing heists. You've got all these different things that are just really crazy and zany. You've got a group of CIA members or ex-CIA members who are named after candy bars, and prior to that, they were named after STDs, which leads to hilarious lines of dialogue, like one of them saying, "You try spending a whole year being named chlamydia." Just stuff like that. Repeated gags that are fun, like the fact that Hudson just wants a cup of cappuccino, and just throughout the film he just can't get that cup of cappuccino. It gets shot at, it gets spilled. Like, he never really gets that cup until the end of the movie. Incorporating Leonardo da Vinci and this alchemy machine that turns lead into gold. Having the villains be these and just really over the top rich twats who are just ridiculously just evil and childish, and just the kind of villains where they aren't sophisticated at all, despite the fact that they're trying to present this air of sophistication because of their clothing or because of their interests. And you just have all this crazy stuff. You got a butler with a sword in his arm. You've got these bombs that are launched out of rocket launchers, essentially. Like, there's just projectile bomb cannons. It's a very creative, wild, insane movie. There's even a moment near the end where Hudson Hawk is literally a cartoon, bobbing and weaving like it's Roger Rabbit or something. And I can see why this tone is a little jarring for some people, and I do agree the tone is a little jarring too at times. I think it could have been a little bit more cohesive, because there are some moments where the tone does clash. Also, the romance element is not nearly as strong as some of the other aspects of the film, but that doesn't mean that the entire movie and the entire script is a misfire just because there are some things that don't land. Because there's a lot of stuff that's genuinely clever. The concept, despite the execution not always being the best, the humor, when it really is on its A game, is hilarious. When it's on the worst game, it's the opposite. I mean, there's a gag where some security guards are looking through the phone book, and one guy's like, "Oh, there's 270 Wongs in here," and then the other guard is like, "That's too many Wong numbers." Like, there's some really groaner gags like that in this script. The butler, for some reason, he shows up when he's about to fight Hudson Hawk in the climax with war paint on, and he goes, "How? Why? What the fuck was that?" I still don't understand the thought process there, why the writers thought that would be funny and why they thought that was going to work. And so there's a lot of stuff like that. The line that Bruce Willis gives after he decapitates the butler, "I guess you won't be attending that hat convention in July." There's stuff that just doesn't work. But that's what happens with comedies. There's every comedy, no matter how good it is, has a lot of gags that just don't land, a lot of lines that just don't pan out, that aren't funny. But that doesn't mean that this film is not funny, because there are some really funny bits when Bruce Willis is on the gurney on the highway. Hudson is rolling down on this gurney, and he looks at a car that has one of those popular stickers where it says 1-800 how's my driving, and he's all like, "How's my driving? 1-800 I'm gonna fucking die." And then there's just a lot of other stuff where Hudson just has a really great sense of humor. He has some great barbs. I love the bits where Hudson and Tommy are busting each other's balls. And I just love the back and forth between a lot of these characters. He's not even afraid to talk shit to the villains. Like, he's tied up, and Minerva's talking about how I'm gonna hunt all the people that you love down, and I'm gonna kill them, including your high school sweetheart. And then Hudson just gives her the name of his sweetheart. It's like, go ahead, you'd be doing me a favor. So, and then you have these CIA guys. Like I said, they have these names where they're named after candy bars, but they all have these different quirky personalities and different traits. One of them, Kit Kat, is a mute, and he just speaks through these cards. And it's just a film that just keeps surprising you in terms of just where it's willing to go when it comes to its creativity. And it's just a good enough script overall, despite its moments where it misses the mark, that it still is ultimately a positive. Because you have a good concept, you have characters that you like Hudson and Tommy. The villains are definitely vicious and vile. The whole central conflict involving this machine that turns lead into gold, and Hudson has to find all these different parts, so he has to steal all these different works of art because they have a piece of this crystal that's hidden in them that'll make the machine work. There's a lot going on here that maintains your interest, and a lot going on here that surprises you. And sometimes in a bad way, but also sometimes in a good way. So that's why I feel, at the end of the day, despite how it's not as consistent of a script when it comes to the quality, it's still a good script overall. And the cast, I also feel, is a nice cast. Bruce Willis as Hudson Hawk. I think it's one of his most endearing roles of his career. You can tell that Bruce had so much passion for this role, that he loved playing this character. I don't care what he says now. I don't care what he said to promote 12 Monkeys, where he said, I wish I could go back in time and stop myself from making Hudson Hawk. Bruce had a blast. And it really makes the film so entertaining to watch, because Bruce is just so into this character. He's having so much fun playing this role, and it's infectious. It really is. It's an infectious energy that he brings to this performance. Danny Aiello is also having the time of his life playing Tommy Five Tone, and you can tell that he loved it. He loved the experience. He loved working with Bruce. The two were longtime friends prior to even being in this film. In fact, they wanted to do a film together for many, many years. So this was a really great opportunity for both of them to be in a film together and to just have fun. And it really does show. Like, the two have instant chemistry, and they're electric with one another. I just love the scenes between Bruce and Danny. Andie MacDowell, she's all right as Anna. I could see why some people aren't big on her, because when she's trying to be funny, it just comes across as a little awkward more than anything else, like the dolphin stuff and some of the other things. She's sweet enough. She has her own unique charm. I thought that she had decent chemistry with Bruce, but it wasn't really sizzling chemistry by any means. He's definitely had better chemistry in other films with other actresses. I know she was essentially a last-minute replacement because the first two actresses were not able to play the role. Isabella Rossellini was cast initially, but then she dropped out. Then they brought in another Italian actress. I think she was Italian. I could be wrong. but then she hurt her back, and then she couldn't do the film anymore, so they had to bring in Andie MacDowell. So as like a last minute replacement, she did an all right job. I often do wonder how the film would have been if you had Andie cast from the beginning, so then she could build that chemistry during pre-production and rehearsals and stuff like that, instead of having to kind of just try to figure it out on the set after a week of shooting. Richard E. Grant is a great bad guy, and so was Sandra Bernhard as Minerva. So yeah, Richard E. Grant played a great, just rich, smarmy, slimy douchebag in Darwin Mayflower, and Sandra Bernhard was a great bitch as Minerva. And they also had their own chemistry that was also really strong. Like, you bought that they just loved being bad, and they loved being bad together. And I know Richard E. Grant in interviews and in his book has slammed this film and has talked all this trash about it. And, you know, to each their own. But call me an idiot all you want to, Richard E. Grant, because that's apparently what he's done. He called Mark Kermode, a pretty well-known critic, he called him an idiot for liking the film. And you can call me an idiot all you want to. I still like this film. I still really enjoy Hudson Hawk, and I enjoy your performance in it. He hammed it up, and so did Sandra, but it worked for the film that it was. It was an over-the-top, zany cartoon of a movie. So it worked that you had these villains that were just as over-the-top as any of these other cartoon villains. Donald Burton, he was effective as Alfred, the butler. I love that he's called Alfred, too. It's a very different Alfred than the one that Bruce Wayne had as his mentor for many, many years. You also have the actors and actresses who play the various different members of the CIA. Don Harvey plays Snickers. David Caruso plays Kit Kat. Andrew Bernarski plays Butterfinger. Lorraine Toussaint as Almond Joy. James Coburn, who plays the leader of that group, who gets involved in a kung fu battle with Hudson Hawk at the end. It looks like something out of Inspector Gadget, the cartoon. Frank Stallone is also in this as Caesar Mario, one of the Mario brothers, because there's multiple different Nintendo gags or references in this script. Overall, I think it's a really good cast. It's a great cast. Out of the cast, I would say Andie MacDowell is the one that is the weakest, but for the most part, everyone else just really did a great job with these characters and with these roles. The cinematography by Dante Spinati, it's there. I would say there are some times where it doesn't look as good as I think it could have. It looks a little flat, and I blame that more on the cinematographer. But that's also another instance of a guy that they kind of had to find last minute, because there was a different cinematographer initially, and then he wasn't able to do it for whatever reason. So then they had to bring in this guy. So there's a lot of things that happened with this production where could have derailed it, could have caused it to completely implode, and it didn't. It was still a pretty fun overall movie. It still worked out rather well, at least for me. I know for a lot of critics at the time it didn't, but I disagree. It was also well edited by Chris Levinson and Michael Tronick. I like the score by Michael Kamen, which featured some elements of work by Robert Kraft. The music, I really love how they use Swinging on a Star when Hudson and Tommy are doing the heist in the beginning at the museum. It's a catchy tune. It's just a really fun scene. And I really love the side-by-side song that they use in the climax when Tommy and Hudson are firing bombs at the castle. Side by side. So it's just a fun soundtrack. I think there was a theme for Hudson Hawk that was sung by I think it was Doctor Hook, which was pretty cool to have Doctor Hook do a song for the film. Um, it's a really crazy, fun film. It's also definitely R rated. I saw it on TV when I was a kid, so I saw the censored version and I enjoyed it then. But when I saw it uncut for the first time years later, I loved it even more because it's such a unique blend of humor and action and genuine moments of edge. Like, it's an edgy film. It's a very sharp film, not just when it comes to its gags and the wit. I mean, there's a guy who gets decapitated. There's people who get blown up with bombs. So it's a film that is definitely an R-rated movie. And when it comes to a film that's so zany and cartoonish, you don't see a lot of films that are R-rated that have that kind of vibe. And the only other film I can think of off the top of my head that's similar is another movie that I adore. And honestly, probably like even more than this, and The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which came out around the same time and also didn't do well with critics and also wasn't a success financially. So it's one of those things where I think the reason why I enjoy Hudson Hawk so much is that I enjoy films like Hudson Hawk quite a bit. And it's a kind of film that you just don't see a lot of nowadays, or if you do, it's not really the same kind of approach. And I think there are films that are similar to this, like MacGruber, for instance, but this is just way funnier and way more entertaining and just a better overall film with a better story and better characters. And it's a film that I do feel has a lot of entertainment, a lot of excitement, and a lot of creativity. And at the end of the day, I highly recommend it. I really do. I recommend people watch Hudson Hawk at least once just to get a taste of its absurdity, to get a taste of the weirdness, get a taste of just its sheer crazy originality and creativity. It's the kind of stuff that a lot of people look for in films nowadays, let alone back then. So it's not a film that's for everyone, but it's much like a cup of cappuccino. It's an acquired taste. And if you develop a taste for it, it's quite tasty. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Hudson Hawk. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.